The loader is about the hardest working piece of equipment we have in highway maintenance. And in many highway maintenance operations, it's the loader operator who keeps things going. Part 1 of this program on loader operation will cover pre-trip inspections, servicing the loader to get ready for a day's work. Startup procedures. Some of the loader controls you'll use. And shutting down the loader at the end of the day. Part 2 will cover maneuvering the loader and basic operations. Before we get started, I should point out that we have a lot of loaders, big and small, different makes and models, and we can't go into all of the differences here. In this program, we'll use a John Deere loader. But it's always a good idea to read the operator's manual for the loader you'll be using. Study the maintenance requirements and learn the location and function of the various instruments and controls. Okay, let's get started with pre-trip inspections. Follow the inspections outlined in the daily checklist. Note any problems you find and tell your supervisor about anything you can't fix yourself. Start with a good overall look at the machine. Any signs of leaks or damage? Check it out. Check the tires every day. Look at the condition of the tread and sidewalls. Look for deep cuts or punctures. Check behind the tire to find leaks from defective wheel seals. Check for underinflated tires. Use a tire gauge if you're not sure. Underinflation wears out tires quickly and makes steering the loader that much harder. And check for loose or broken lug nuts while you're at it. Make sure everything is nice and tight. Some of our loaders have tires which contain liquid for ballast. Check the pressure on these tires with a special gauge and with the tire stem up, or you may get a face full of calcium chloride. Look for leaks around the hydraulic hoses. Make sure the fittings are tight. If you see a puddle or any sign of a leak, get it fixed before you start the loader. Check your front tires, again, for proper inflation, uneven tread wear, and so on. Tire trouble's about the last thing you need out on the job. Take a look at the bucket and blade. That's the business end. It takes a beating whenever you use the loader. Look for cracks or excessive wear. Replacing a worn blade is a lot cheaper than replacing the whole bucket. Then continue your inspections. Just walk around the loader and look for signs of obvious or potential trouble. If you find something wrong, take care of it yourself or report it to your supervisor. Check the hydraulic oil level through the sight glass on the tank. If the bucket's resting on the ground and you haven't found any leaks, you should be able to see the level through the glass. Take a good look throughout the engine compartment. Look for loose hoses, broken parts, leaks, anything that could lead to a breakdown. Then check the grill. If it gets clogged up with trash or leaves, the engine may overheat. Keep it clear so air can flow through to the radiator. And check the coolant level. Keep it above the radiator core with fresh coolant. Bad fan belts and hoses can cause overheating too. Press on the belt. Check it for tightness. Look for cracks and signs of wear. And check the radiator hose. Make sure it's tight and in good shape. Pull on the fan. A loose fan could mean the water pump is going bad. Check the engine oil every day. Keep it between the add and full marks on the dipstick. If the oil is foamy, gritty, or smells of fuel, don't start the engine until the problem has been diagnosed and corrected. Next, check the air filter restriction indicator. When it turns red, the filter should be cleaned or replaced. If your loader doesn't have the restriction indicator, you should remove the air filter and clean it out. Dirty air is one of the leading causes of diesel engine failure. Look for dents or holes in the filter. Tap it lightly on your hand to shake out dust. And if it's really clogged up, get a new filter. Check the pre-cleaner. That's where most of the dust gets trapped before it gets to the air filter. Dump out the dust and wipe out the bowl. The pre-cleaner should be cleaned out occasionally during the day, especially if you're working in dusty conditions. Diesel engines need a lot of air, and it has to be clean. Many loaders are equipped with turbochargers which increase engine power. You should make sure the hoses leading to and from the turbocharger are in good shape. A worn hose like this could allow dirt to enter the engine and lead to a complete breakdown. That does it for engine checks. Now, greasing. One thing you'll learn as a loader operator, there's a lot of greasing to do. There'll be a lubrication chart on the loader or in the operator's manual. Refer to it to find the location of the grease fittings and the recommended service intervals. Generally, you grease the parts that get the most wear every day. On loaders, that means the boom and bucket pivot points. Notice how he wipes the fitting clean before he adds grease. That prevents forcing dirty grease back into the fitting. And there are more fittings in the pivot area. Grease the bearings on the drive shaft. And the frame steering points. But never get in the pivot area while the engine's running. You'll see why in a minute. Okay, you're almost ready to start the loader. Climb into the cab using the foot and hand holds. Don't grab the steering wheel. Now it's time for a little housekeeping. Clean the windshield and windows. You have to be able to see clearly on all sides. Keep the floorboard clean. You could easily slip on a greasy floorboard as you enter or leave the cab. If your loader has a cab with rollover protection, use your seat belt. But on loaders without rollover protection, don't use a seat belt. You want to be able to jump clear if you upset the machine. To start this loader, you have to be in neutral. Turn the key to on and press the starter button. Let the engine warm up for 5 minutes. In the meantime, complete your daily checks. As the loader warms up, make sure the gauges on the instrument panel are working. You should get an oil pressure reading right away. If the gauge reads 0 or low oil pressure, that's a sign of a major problem. Shut off the engine and report it. Turn on the overhead beacon. Make sure it and all of your lights are working. And if you'll be taking the loader out of the yard, you'll need a slow-moving vehicle sign mounted on the radiator grill. Check the color of the exhaust smoke. Thick black or white smoke indicates engine trouble. Put the transmission in reverse and make sure your backup alarm is working. Then drive ahead slowly and test your brakes. I said slowly. Now a couple more points about starting. Don't crank the starter for more than 30 seconds at a time. That'll wear out the starter and the battery. So if the engine doesn't start right away, wait a couple of minutes and then try again. And make sure no one is near the loader when you start up. Here's why. Most loaders are articulated. When you turn the front wheels, the whole front end of the machine swings around. Watch what happens to this barrow. The thing to remember is that even with the engine turned off, there may still be enough pressure in the hydraulic lines to move the front end slightly if someone turns the steering wheel. So before servicing the pivot area, you should lock the safety bar in place to prevent any chance of injury. All right, let's go over some of the loader controls. First, the boom and bucket controls. There are only 4 movements, so it's really pretty simple. You can raise the boom, roll the bucket back, roll the bucket forward, and lower the boom. In this loader, you control all of those movements with one lever. Pull it back to raise the boom. And push it forward to lower it. That's a natural movement. Back to raise, forward to lower. Now, when you pull the lever to the left, the bucket will roll back. That's how you load it. Push the lever to the right, and the bucket will roll forward for dumping. Left for loading, right for dumping. There are 2 more bucket controls. First, the automatic leveler. Pull the lever all the way to the left and let it go. The bottom of the bucket will automatically return to a level position. That's a handy feature you'll learn more about in Part 2. And there's also the bucket float control. Push the lever all the way forward and the bucket will float along the surface you're working. Use this feature when you have to back drag or smooth an area. So that's how you move the boom and bucket. But what about moving the loader? Again, it's pretty simple. This loader has an automatic transmission with 4 positions. Low gear is for working. High gear is for traveling at higher speeds on a smooth surface. Don't use it for working. Reverse is for, you guessed it, reversing. And neutral is for parking and starting. You can lock it in neutral with a latch on the column. So shifting is no problem. There's no clutch pedal. Just remember to stop the loader before you shift from reverse to forward or from forward to reverse. Although there is no clutch pedal, there is a clutch control. It's for working on slopes. Whenever you hit the brakes in the loader, the transmission shifts into neutral. When you release the brakes, the loader will roll forward before the gear engages. Engaging the clutch control eliminates that delayed reaction. Now, when you take your foot off the brakes, you won't roll forward. Okay, we've covered pre-trip inspections, startup procedures, and the controls you'll use as a loader operator. Now let's cover shutting down. Park on level ground. Put the transmission in neutral, set the parking brake, and lower the bucket flat on the ground. Never shut down the loader immediately after it's been working under a full load. Let the engine idle for a few minutes to cool down gradually. Check the transmission fluid. The dipstick is behind the seat on this model. Checking the level when the engine's warm will give you a truer reading on the stick. After the cool down period, shut off the engine and remove the key. Cycle the steering wheel back and forth to relieve pressure in the hydraulic system. Only then is it safe to climb down into the pivot area. Do a quick walk-around inspection. Look for damage and report any operational problems to your supervisor. Make sure the rain cap on the exhaust is closed so water can't get into the engine. Try to keep the equipment clean. It'll last longer. Clean out the bucket too. The sooner you do it, the easier it'll be. Okay, that's it for part 1 of loader operation. In part 2, we'll cover maneuvering the loader and some basic operations you'll need to learn. In many highway maintenance operations, it's the loader operator who keeps things going. And although it takes a while to get a feel for the machine and how it works, you'll see that there's a certain rhythm to operation, a balance. The loader is a powerful machine, and in the hands of a skilled operator, it can get a lot of work done in a day. In part one of this program on loader operation, we went through the procedures for starting up the loader, operating the loader controls, and shutting down at the end of the day. Here in part two, we'll cover maneuvering the loader and some of the basic operations you'll perform as a loader operator. The first thing to consider when driving the loader is bucket position. You should keep the bucket around 2 feet off the ground and rolled back. Never travel with the bucket high in the air. Besides cutting down your visibility, it makes the machine top-heavy. A good bump could tip you over. You could also get snagged on overhead power lines or tree limbs. Keep the bucket low for better control. And remember, the bucket can be used to carry many things, but not people. Never allow riders in the bucket or anywhere else on the loader. To drive the loader forward, first fasten your seatbelt. Make sure you're in neutral. Then start the loader and raise the bucket to travel position. Release the parking brake and shift into gear. You'll remember there are 2 forward gears. Low gear for working. And high gear for traveling. Pretty simple, right? Well, backing up is easy too. Just stop the loader, put it in reverse, and back up. Your rear view field of vision in a loader is excellent. Use it. Now, as you learned earlier, steering a loader is quite a bit different than steering a car or truck. The whole front end swings around when you turn the wheel. The frame is articulated. It gives you a much tighter turning radius to maneuver in close quarters. But when you're driving in the yard or to the job site, give yourself plenty of room to go around obstacles. If your turns are too sharp, the rear end will hit whatever you're trying to get around. And remember, never let anyone in the pivot area when the engine's running. I'm sure you remember that barrel we crushed in part one. Now, a couple of points to remember. Loaders don't have springs or shock absorbers. A bad bump, even a small one, can rock the loader enough to cause control problems. Slow down on rough terrain. And keep the bucket about 2 feet off the ground. If the loader gets to rocking and the bucket's too low, there's a chance it will dig into the ground and you'll lose control. Another thing to keep in mind are your doors. Never operate with the loader doors swinging open. If you do, they'll get banged up like this in no time. Now let's take a look at a couple of basic operations. Working with stockpiles and dump trucks. First, stockpiling. Moving a stockpile from one place to another. I know, sounds like the military, right? Well, in fact, it's an excellent operation to learn how to maneuver the loader and use the boom and bucket controls. Keep your work area as smooth as possible. A level area lets you move more quickly and improves your productivity. Clean up the area around the stockpile before, during, and after the operation. When you're working with stockpiles, it's important that you keep the bucket down low and level to the ground as you go into the pile. If you go at the stockpile with the bucket rolled forward, you'll dig into the ground before you reach the pile. Besides making your area look like a battlefield, you'll contaminate the stockpile material. Since this is a stockpile of a special aggregate, the contaminated portion is no good. On the other hand, if you go at the pile with the bucket rolled back, the loader will push right up the side of the pile, compacting the material underneath. Your front wheels will lose traction, and you won't get much material in the bucket either. So keep the bucket level, with the blade just off the ground. Most loaders have an indicator somewhere on the boom that shows you when the bucket's level. And you also have an automatic leveler in the cab. Just pull it to the left and let it go. And the bucket returns to the level position as you lower the boom. Go straight in at the bottom of the stockpile. Then lift the boom and roll the bucket back as you continue pushing into the pile. Keep the bucket curled back as you back out of the pile. Go to the site of the new stockpile and curl the bucket forward to dump the material. Dump from as low a height as possible. That prevents scattering the material all over the area. Then go back for more. During this or any operation, pay attention to how the machine is running. Keep an eye on the gauges. If anything goes out of the normal operating range, stop working and investigate. And when you take a break, give the loader a quick walk-around inspection. Look for loose parts, leaks, or any sign of damage, and take care of it. Clean out the pre-cleaner now and then. As I said in Part 1, dirty air is one of the leading causes of diesel engine failure. It doesn't take much time to take care of your equipment. Digging material out of a bank is just about the same as working a stockpile. The only difference is the material in a bank is harder and more compact. You need to work a little slower and use more power to dig it out. Go straight in with the bucket level and low. Curl the bucket back as you raise the boom. Then back out when the bucket's full. You'll also have to work stockpiles of the salt we use for snow and ice control. Again, the procedure is the same. But the stockpile is usually stored indoors in a salt shed. That's different. The problem is clearance. The bucket can easily reach the rafters in the shed. You've got to keep the entrance to the shed clear. If the material builds up in the doorway, it cuts down your overhead clearance. And even though the shed is not exactly the Cornhusker Hotel in Lincoln, it needs its roof. Okay, now loading trucks. As I said earlier, working with a stockpile is good practice for other loader operations. It's hard to damage a pile of dirt. But loading trucks requires a little more practice and a lot more care. So if loader operation is new to you, take it easy. Think about every move you make. Try to follow a three-point path. Go into the stockpile, raise the boom, and curl the bucket back. Then back out and turn. Go straight in at the side of the truck, raising the bucket high enough to clear the side. If you go in at an angle, half of the bucket load will end up on the ground. Roll the bucket forward to dump it. After you dump the bucket, roll it back or lift the boom before you back out. If you don't clear the side of the box, you're going to do a lot of damage. Always keep an eye on the driver or other people around you. The driver should be in the cab or well away from the truck. A hard hat won't do any good when you're talking about a bucket full of heavy material. One more point about loading trucks. Don't dump the material with the bucket up too high. If that was a bucket full of rock instead of dirt, the driver might need a new suspension system for his truck. Okay, let's take a look at one more operation. Loading pipe on a trailer. It's really a 2- or 3-man operation. While you're operating the loader, the others help with the chains and stacking. The trick is to adjust the chains so the pipe is balanced. Then, moving slowly, you operate the boom and bucket control to lift and lower the pipe. The first layer of pipe should be blocked. Then chain down loosely to keep them from rolling when you put on the second layer. As in all loader operations, careful work and avoiding dangerous situations is the best way to get the job done. I really can't stress safety enough. The loader is a powerful machine and it demands respect and careful operation. Read the manual. Read the manufacturer's warning. Know the capabilities and limitations of the machine. The loader can be used on any number of maintenance jobs, but it can be dangerous if not operated correctly. And that's it for loader operation. We've covered a lot of ground in 2 programs, but watching a TV show won't make you a good operator. That takes practice, experience, and a willingness to learn. If you're a new operator, these programs are meant to give you a start, to show you the capabilities of the machine and your responsibilities for its daily maintenance. And if you're an experienced highway worker, maybe you picked up some details you'll find useful. Either way, the rest is up to you.